Welcome, dear listener, to a realm where shadows whisper secrets and the veil between reality and nightmare thins. As you navigate these twisted tales of darkness and dread, let the chills that dance along your spine be a testament to the macabre delights we unfold. If these stories ensnare your imagination and haunt your dreams, share. For the more who join our dark descent, the deeper we can plunge into the eerie abyss together. And remember, as you turn off the lights and let the darkness embrace you, true terror lies not in what you hear, but in what you fear.
Orion Pest Control, a dreamer, a weeper, and a bastard. I'd wondered once before if the mechanic hadn't always been a hunter. When he'd forced those memories into my head, I'd felt what he'd felt. When he laid eyes on the white sun of mist, there had been admiration and lust. Lust, not just for his new king, but for blood. He'd gladly abandoned whatever life had held for him before in order to become a Wild Huntsman. I hadn't even considered the possibility that he could, and would even want to, make me experience his memories. If I'd known that was a possibility, I would have included that in the conditions. Afterwards, I felt like I'd been tainted. Like if I wasn't careful, his malice was a cancer that would grow until it consumed me from the inside out. I didn't know if that would actually happen, but after getting a glimpse into the mechanic's psyche, I understand him a little too well now, way more than I ever wanted to. That had to have been why he'd given me the hint that way. He'd known that brief window into his mind would be enough to disturb me. I assumed that when he dug through my memories at Dylan's, he'd emotionally relive them just as I did. If that's the case, then I hope he found something in me to be as much of a poison to him as his malice was for me. Whether it's rational or not, I'm afraid to linger on the mechanic's cruelty for too long. I just need to stay focused on what helps. Something that I consider to be both good news and bad news is that I at least know for sure that I'm not dealing with the king of the Wild Hunt, Gwyn ap Nude himself. Though that comfort doesn't mean much, since I still have to figure out who the hell the mechanic is. The church was the most useful memory. A ruined stone building, surrounded by black water, partially flooded. The reason why it had seemed so familiar to me because of an urban legend regarding one of the lake in a neighboring county. According to this legend, there used to be a town there back when Pennsylvania was first ratified. The devil came to this town impersonating a priest, leading the townspeople into wickedness. It started with the devil replacing the communal line with whiskey, encouraging the townspeople to spend their days intoxicated instead of honoring the good book. The devil then taught the townspeople witchcraft, convincing them that the dark arts he introduced them to were simply manifestations of the Lord's power. Assuming that this is all true, that church sounded like an absolute blast. Witchcraft and booze? Sign me up. However, God didn't see things that way, and he punished the townspeople for allowing themselves to be misled into temptation and blasphemy, causing black water to bubble up from beneath the church, submerging the entire town until it was wiped off the map completely. As far as urban legends go, it's definitely an odd one. Definitely a product of religious fear-mongering. For the longest time, I didn't believe it, simply because there was no record of a town having ever been there. However, those who live near the area insist that a ruined stone church resurfaces every full moon. And with the church's arrival, demons apparently follow. The thing is, I didn't think that this church is from our world. I think it's from theirs. That might be why there's no record of it. If the urban legend turns out to be true, then this might be the church I'm looking for. The only problem is, the next full moon won't be until the end of the month. This, unfortunately, gives you-know-who plenty of time to raise hell before I can even attempt to find the ledger. Since you might be wondering about what exactly one does in my position, I worked. Bills have to be paid, and I doubt my landlord would accept. I'm being hunted for sport by a psychopomp as an excuse for any late payments. Until that church appeared, there wasn't much I could really do. When one of our clients called, he sounded embarrassed.
Hey, I'm sorry. This probably sounds ridiculous, but my son thinks there's a monster under his bed,
and no matter how many times I try to assure him there's nothing there, he wakes up in the middle of the night absolutely terrified. I know it's kind of silly, but if you have the time, could you pretend like you found a monster and caught it, so both of us can get some sleep? Okay, I told him I could, but internally decided that I wanted to get the kid's side of the story as well. On a surface level, it sounded like a product of the kid's overactive imagination. But for whatever reason, kids can see things that adults can't. It wouldn't take too much time to be certain that there wasn't truly anything there. Just as a disclaimer, I want to make it known that not everything that a kid sees is actually anything atypical. Sometimes it's really just them being afraid of the dark. Though given my line of work, I'd say it's a perfectly reasonable fear. The client then started to distinctly talk about how his wife had been better at comforting their son than he had. They'd lost her while she was giving to birth, what should have been a daughter, but ended up being stillborn. That was only 2 weeks before he called Orion. Truthfully, I never know how to react when clients dump such tragic admissions on me. I offered my condolences, but it seemed contrived, at least to me.
I still can't believe she's gone. Maybe that's why he's seeing monsters. Maybe it's a grief thing.
Again, I didn't know what to say, but I made sure to sound as comforting as possible. Yeah, it could be. I'm not exactly qualified to say, since I'm not that well versed in child psychology, but I'll do what I can, okay? The client thanked me for agreeing to help out. He then thanked me for letting him talk, saying that he's had a hard time getting himself to speak to anyone since the funeral. Poor guy. I also made a mental note to sneak some salt along the client's west-facing windows. The mechanic would have a field day with someone as grief-stricken as him. When I got there, the client tried to smile as he let me in. He introduced me to his son, telling me that he would be 5 in a month, though the sullen look on the boy's face made him appear older. The loss, understandably, was weighing heavily on him too. I asked the client if I could have a moment to talk to the boy alone. He nodded, disappearing into the hall. The first words out of the son's mouth were,
He doesn't believe me, and you won't either.
I assured him, I've seen lots of things people don't believe in, so why don't you tell me about your monster? I might be able to get rid of it for you. The kid looked down, frowning.
It's not there now. It only comes out at night.
Well, how long has this been going on?
Since Mama and my little sister went to heaven.
The kid said this so plainly while looking unsure, like he understood that his mother was gone, but not why. It can be difficult enough for adults to process loss, so I can't imagine how harder it must be for a 4-year-old child. Can you show me where you saw the monster at least? I asked. I followed by explaining. Some monsters are really good hiders, but they do leave things behind that I can use to find them. The kid guided me to his bedroom, standing in the hall as he skeptically stared at his bed, adorned with the Sonic the Hedgehog bedspread. My hagstone vibrated. There was something here. I checked under the bed. Nothing. Not even a rogue sock. The boy looked helpless. The hagstone didn't stop. What does the monster look like? I asked him gently. He looked surprised that I was still taking his concern seriously.
She looks like an old lady with bird feet and a beak. I could see her eyes glowing in the dark.
The description rang a bell. An unfortunate bell, too. Hey, did she hurt you? The boy looked down, beginning to cry.
Daddy said they're just bad dreams. But when I wake up, the monster's there.
Instantly, I comforted the kid, promising him that I would get rid of it. His desperation, combined with the fact that the family member had just endured a stillborn, meant that it could only mean one thing: a dreamer. Like housekeepers, dreamers have been known to worm their way into human dwellings, but at least the housekeepers have the courtesy to do some chores after making themselves at home. As their title implies, the dreamers have been known to disturb a household's sleep by including vivid nightmares to anyone unfortunate enough to catch its attention, sometimes even inducing sleep paralysis. Some of our records state that dreamers are the disquieted spirits of stillborns and miscarried infants, bitterly watching their relatives live on while they never had a chance to even draw their first breath. During the day, they tend to hide under beds, in closets, and behind heaters. So if one of your kids reports a monster in their bedroom, like this client's son did, just know that a nightlight won't cut it. When I told the kid, I gave him the G-rated version, that it was a monster that likes to scare kids, but that it could be scared too. And wouldn't it only be fair to frighten the monster right back? The tears stopped as soon as the kid considered, eventually sniffling.
What's the monster afraid of?
Food. The kid wrinkled his nose.
Really?
They sure are. They give you nightmares so that they can feed off of your dreams. Real food terrifies them because it's not a dream and they don't know how to eat it. The kid pondered this and eventually nodded.
That makes sense.
The truth is that dreamers may eventually leave if they're given offerings, normally in the form of desserts. I don't trust that a 4-year-old will remember to take something fresh out from under his bed, so I slipped some candy under there. That being said, dreamers can be stubborn. Sometimes offerings don't cut it. In cases like that, it can be difficult for a regular person to get a dreamer out of their home. I remember hoping that this wouldn't be one of those cases. Once I had a moment, I salted the house's windows, as I considered doing earlier. This kid didn't need to lose his mother and his father. In turn, the client definitely didn't deserve to end up at the mercy of the mechanic and his ilk. I did inform the client on my dreamer treatment plan, expanding that I got his son to believe that candy was the dreamer's kryptonite. I then told him that that doesn't work, to call me back. He seemed confused, but otherwise went for it. I think he was just willing to do anything to help this kid get a good night's sleep, even if he didn't believe that there was anything sinister going on. The next day, I got a call back. It was going to be a bad dreamer case after all. The candy offering had made the dreamer move on from harassing the boy to pestering his father. The client shakily informed me.
You're probably gonna think I'm crazy. Hell, I feel crazy. I had this horrible nightmare about Lunda. I can't even say it. Anyway, it's not important. But I woke up and I couldn't breathe or move and... I got the client to calm down and assured him that I would come by after hours to deal with the pest when it was active, as long as he was comfortable with that. He just wanted the dreamer out. While I know that going out at night when the hunt is most active is risky, I had promised the mechanic to make things exciting. If he got bored, or otherwise felt that I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain, he'd have no reason to hold up his end. The deal would be off, and I'd be right back to square one. I was just gonna have to pray that he wouldn't pick that night in particular to continue the breaking down process with me. But back to the dreamer. When offerings don't work, the dreamer will have to be captured, which can be achieved through stealth, planning, and an empty bottle. Anybody will do, no matter the material or the capacity. I pretended to sleep on the couch, knowing that the dreamer wouldn't feel emboldened enough to come out unless it thought that nobody would be able to interrupt its nighttime activities. I left my hagstone hanging on the front doorknob, partially to discourage any interference from certain outside parties, and particularly to ensure it couldn't ruin everything by alerting the dreamer to my presence. A few hours passed. Claws clicked on the wooden floor. I didn't move. I had to wait until the dreamer started attacking the client. That's when it would be the most vulnerable. The dreamer's claws tapped their way down the hall, past where I'd laid in the living room, pausing near me. It wheezed as it got close to me. Even though I didn't dare to even peek through my eyelashes, I knew that the dreamer's nose was close to mine. I could feel it. It took effort to keep my breathing in the same gentle pattern as it would be if I were in the midst of a peaceful dream. To my relief, the dreamer's claws eventually tapped away, heading towards the client's room. His door creaked open. I waited until I heard the client let out a soft groan. Slowly, quietly, I crept to the bedroom, empty Fiji water bottle in my hand. Thankfully, the house was a fairly new construct, complete with that awful, modern farmhouse aesthetic, so it didn't creak as much. As an aside, trying to do this in older homes can be a bit of a pain in the ass. Peering through the open bedroom door, I found the dreamer kneeling on top of the client's chest. Her hair was gnarled as if old straw were growing out of her scalp. Her black beak was partially open, set beneath a pair of gleaming white eyes on her wrinkled face, and like the boy said, her legs resembled that of a chicken. The client whimpered, his head turning in his sleep with a grimace. I already had the bottle open, the cap in my other hand, as I snuck closer to the dreamer. She was invested in whatever she was making the client see, her beak clicking subtly as if she were speaking. Once she was within my reach, I swung the bottle in a wide arc, causing the dreamer to dissipate the black smoke. She let out an outraged cry that was cut off abruptly as I screwed the cap on. The client woke up with a jolt, looking around in alarm until his eyes locked on me. It probably wasn't the most comforting sight as I stood at the edge of his bed holding a Fiji bottle full of turbulent black smoke, like the world's strangest sleep paralysis demon. As he slowly realized that he was safe in his bedroom, instead of wherever he'd been in his nightmare, he visibly relaxed, covering his face with his hands. The commotion had woken up the little boy, who stood in the hallway, sleepily rubbing his eyes. The client leapt out of bed to scoop him up, assuring him that everything was okay. The boy looked at me groggily.
Did you get the monster? I held up the bottle so he could see. The boy sighed, muttering that the bottle was cool, before conking out on his father's shoulder.
Eyeballing the smoky bottle, the client whispered,
Is that it?
I nodded, quietly telling him that I was going to release it far away where it couldn't return, but just in case, put tape over every keyhole in the house to prevent any possibility of it getting inside again. Dreamers drift in through keyholes and doors exclusively. They're like more open windows and chimneys, and any other openings into homes. We're not sure why, but it makes preventing them easy at least. I retrieved my hagstone, placing it back around my neck before I left with the smoky bottle in hand. Little taps shook my hand as the dreamer struggled in its tropical-themed prison. Once I got outside, I worriedly looked around. No sign of anything. Not yet, at least. I hurried to the G6, knowing that I'd feel safer once my shotgun was within reach again. On my way to the spot I intended to reach the dreamer at, she yelled at me, voice muffled by the bottle.
Muffled.
I can't hear you in there.
Not fair.
With a sigh, I said, We can talk about it when we get to where we're going. I'm not letting you out of the car. The dreamer let out a grumble, but the complaint stopped. Once I parked, and determined that I was alone as I could be in a neighborhood-infested forest, I untwisted the cap from the bottle. Black smoke flowed out, taking shape into that bird-like figure. The dreamer instantly tried to charge me, but couldn't reach the limits of the hagstone. She let out a growl of frustration, then scowled at me, eyes glowing beneath sagging brows. I calmly asked the dreamer what she wanted to tell me. The dreamer yelled,
He gets to feel the sun on his skin, have breath in his lungs, and be held by loving arms. Why not we?
I hope that I said the right things. You're right. It's not fair. But that's not anyone's fault. I guarantee that if there was a way for your father to bring you and your mother back, he would. Both he and your brother wanted to know you so badly. The dreamer grumbled.
Doesn't seem like it. The funeral happened, and how was that?
Trying to keep my tone gentle, I replied, What else are they supposed to do? They're in pain too, and just trying to figure out where to go from here, and you need to do the same. The dreamer's scowl began to shift from a lost, forlorn expression.
What do you mean?
Your opportunity to be human was taken from you, but you still have a chance to live. It's not going to be what you necessarily wanted, but it's something. Yeah, you may not have the sun, but the moon and the stars are all yours. I never loathe the things I say help. The dreamer said nothing as she disappeared into the trees. She hasn't bothered the family since. I genuinely hope that she and the rest of the family are genuinely able to find peace. A few days passed before I encountered anything else atypical. Meanwhile, while I wasn't exactly in a hurry to see the mechanic again, his absence made me paranoid. I had to drive past his shop on the way to a call. I noticed that his truck wasn't there. For whatever reason, that gave me a bad feeling. When I asked Victor about it, he wasn't able to tell me anything other than the mechanic was out of town. That evening, I heard a woman's song floating from the trees in the direction of the river. She had the kind of voice that was so enchanting that it made the hairs on your skin stand up. The kind of voice that made you stop whatever it was you were doing and hang on to each word. The kind that haunted you long after the song ended, desperate to hear the sing again. There was no reaction from my hagstone. Whatever she was, she didn't mean me harm. Despite that, I was still on edge as I followed her voice.
I found her solemnly scrubbing at a red stain in a white shirt as each word left her mouth. I saw that the singer had red blonde hair that was even lighter than mine, almost white, clinging to her soaked scalp and shoulders. Her nose and eyes were tinged an irritated shade of pink. A weeper. While weepers aren't generally dangerous on their own, these neighbors only appear when death is coming for someone in your family, though they can get violent if provoked. Seeing her made my heart quicken as I wondered who her song was about. I approached her slowly, noticing that her knuckles were bright pink as if she'd been scrubbing for hours. She trailed off, her melody devolving into choked sobs. The weeper raised her head, big blue eyes bloodshot and gleaming with tears, her white eyelashes clinging together. She sniffed, swallowing back another sob. Admittedly, I was afraid, not of the weeper, but for her shirt she held. Please don't let it be my mom's. Struggling to keep the tremor out of my voice, I asked her, "Who are you grieving for?" The weeper's lower lip quaked. She bit it, looking down regretfully, as she let the shirt drift out of her hands, the river's current ringing to me. I reached down to pick it up, examining it for any sort of defining characteristics. It looked vaguely familiar, but I was relieved to see that it didn't belong to my mother. Not only was it far too big for her, but there was a small stain of coffee on the collar. My mom hates coffee. My grandmother had already passed 5 years ago. May she rest in peace. I'd never met my grandfather. I had no contact with my father's side of the family. Hold on. I tried to recall what kind of clothes my father had worn before he was incarcerated. I couldn't. I'd visited him twice in my life, and only remembered ever seeing him in that gray uniform all inmates are issued. The shirt looked big enough to fit him. If you were able to capture a weeper, they will tell you the name of the person fated to die. However, this one didn't seem inclined to run. She gazed mournfully at me as the water swirled around her waiting. "It's my father, isn't it?" I asked dumbly. The weeper nodded gravely. It didn't seem real. I knew that weepers were incredibly accurate when it came to their sense of impending death, but it just didn't make sense. There was some part of me that always believed that it was impossible for someone like the sperm donor to die. Shouldn't I have been afraid? Or sad? Maybe if I had a normal father, whatever it was that I was supposed to feel, I simply couldn't. Despite the messiness of my thoughts, I told the weeper, "I appreciate your song." The weeper offered me a sad smile. "You would be the first." I told her that her voice was beautiful, and I meant it. Before I left, she asked me something that surprised me. "Would it be alright if I sang for you, again outside of my duties? It's not often that I have an appreciative audience." Taking it back, and not wanting to risk pissing off yet another neighbor, I said, sure. Some of her grief seemed to alleviate as I walked away. Her song continued, following me as I made my way back to the G6. I set the shirt on the floor so that it wouldn't get the seat wet. Everything clicked, man. The shirt, the mechanic's absence. The G6 used to be my father's, and the title is still in his name. Rest assured, I haven't shared a last name with him since I was 6. Long story short, Mom grabbed me one day and took us off to hide in our grandma's house. After he came home from work and saw we'd left, he brought his gun to a Gulf gas station. Only one other person besides him survived, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. I don't want to say the other sickening things he did to her. There were some people, and they were my sperm donor side of the family, who blamed my mom for the shooting, saying that she had just been a better wife. He wouldn't have killed all those people and tortured that woman. They weren't the only ones either. How could she not have known that he was like this? How could she raise a child with someone like this? To this day, the way she was vilified doesn't make any sense to me. The harassment eventually got so bad, she and I had to change our names and move. Say what you will about Pittsburgh, but the good thing about it is that it's so big that no one has time to worry about other people's histories. Life got a lot better for us after that. So there you have it. That's my formative years summed up in 3 paragraphs, all to explain why my name is so far removed from my father's. My blood ran cold as I came to the realization that the mechanic had gone after my father. Good luck with that. He was all the way across the country in a Supermax prison. They transferred him there after he strangled one of his cellmates, then beat a corrections officer to death. Great guy, right? After I got home, I Googled my old name, wanting to be sure that the one that I've used for almost 30 years now wasn't associated with it. I got all the way to the 10th page and nothing came up. It probably helps that I don't have any social media that I can't be anonymous on. I also got some good advice from someone on Reddit to keep my identity hidden. In an extreme moment of paranoia, I even paid to have my information taken off those creepy websites that collect personal information without permission. Sleep was not happening after that. He couldn't reach my father, could he? The sperm donor was under constant surveillance on one of the most secure facilities in the country. There was no way for even a Wild Huntsman to get him, right? The next morning, my mom called me. She sounded strange from the moment she said, "Hey, sweetie." She had a bomb to drop on me. Father had an unexpected heart attack. They couldn't save him. He was dead. Heart attack. Something so simple, so regular. Mom muttered, "We're finally free." This may sound odd, but we laughed through our tears together. Emotionally, I was a mess. I was relieved that he was finally gone, and terrified of what the mechanic could be up to, all topped off with a slight tinge of guilt for celebrating the death of another human being, even though I can comfortably say that the old man was pure evil. It was just a lot. The mechanic didn't leave me waiting in suspense for too long. 2 days after receiving that news, I dozed off on a couch watching a cheesy horror movie from the 80s that had something to do with energy vampires from space. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by someone pounding on my door. Squinting at the clock on my wall, I saw that it was 3 a.m. My nighttime visitor pounded on the door again. Still not entirely awake, I groaned as I slowly slunk off the couch to look through the peephole, grumbling internally about how the crotchety old man next door was probably going to bitch at me in the morning. Halfway to the door, my hagstone quivered against my collarbone. That woke me up. I seized my shotgun, adrenaline roaming my spine as the hagstone kept shaking. I glanced down to make sure that the salt line I'd placed in front of my door was still intact. It was. Whatever was outside the door wouldn't be able to get in. That's when I heard the last possible voice I'd ever expected to hear.
"Fiona, please."
Fuck. It was my father. Or it used to be. At that point, I wasn't sure. His voice was strained, shaking as if he were struggling to get the words out. He rasped,
"You won't let me die until you open the door. Please."
"Oh, fuck me." After swallowing back my nerves, I looked through the peephole. Even though I'd been ashamed to be related to him my entire life, when I saw what the mechanic had done to him, I had to hold back a scream as I recoiled from the door. We looked too much alike. Same mouth, same eyes. The mechanic had left all the parts of my father that I shared with him. It was all too easy to imagine that it was me that had been mutilated instead. Pieces cut off until I was reduced to sentient meat. The miserable thing on my doorstep pleaded again. Wiping my eyes with the back of my forearm, I forced myself to turn the knob, shotgun in hand, with every intention of putting what used to be my father out of the misery. It was even worse when all I could do was see him, what was left to see anyway. There were 2 short whistles from the parking lot. I glanced up to see that damn boxy blue truck parked beneath the only working light, the mechanic leaning against the driver's side door. Even though his face was obscured by the shadow cast by his baseball cap, I was certain that he was loving every second of this. He whistled again, as if he was calling a dog. What used to be my father stiffly shuffled on twisted limbs towards the mechanic, shaking and groaning with each movement. I didn't care if the old bastard next door or any of the other tenants complained, as I took aim and blew a hole in the back of my father's misshapen skull. He dropped to the ground, then began to drag himself along as best he could. Both arms ended in stumps. For years, I'd hated that man, wishing that literally any other person on the planet would have been the one to provide the sperm that won. Some may argue that after what he'd done to so many other innocent people, that he deserved to suffer like this, and before that night, I would have agreed. However, it's something else entirely to see him crawling on his belly like a worm, mangled by something that somehow managed to be even more vicious than he was. I knew I couldn't save him, or even offer him the mercy of death. Whatever happened to him next was entirely at the mechanic's discretion. There was only one way I could think of to help him. Ignoring the nausea stirring in my gut, I crossed the sod line and picked my father up, gritting my teeth as he held in agony after I accidentally put too much pressure on his exposed muscles. I carried him as close as the hagstone would allow without making the mechanic flinch, setting him down on the cracked pavement as gently as I could. The amount of strength it took me to remain polite was astronomical. He did what you wanted. Now please, just let him die. The mechanic tilted his head, letting the light illuminate half of his handsome face as he narrowed his eyes at me. "What? You don't like my new pet?" he asked. God, he's the fucking worst. Before I could say anything else, the mechanic smiled as he said, "You know, he and I talked for hours after he died. He was a right pain in the ass. It took me breaking out the pliers for him to remember. Just Fiona. Hell of a dad, right? Pretty name, by the way. Shame it ain't yours anymore." I'm running out of time. Please release him. You're bound by your word. All right, the mechanic said, grin still in place as he bent to drag my father towards him. When I saw the mechanic place his index finger in the corner of my father's eye, I quickly turned and darted towards my apartment, refusing to watch what was about to happen. Rain had been right. My father let out an animalistic shriek, sounding more like a trapped rabbit than a human. No one in the apartments even woke up. Not a single light turned on. The next day, no one mentioned anything, not even the cranky old geezer. Once I was inside, I locked my door, placed a second line of salt across the threshold, and promptly went to the bathroom to puke my guts up. Another night without sleep. Even if the mechanic learns my name, I still have the hagstone. The night I'd made the bet, he'd confirmed that he couldn't get into my head as long as I had it. As long as that's on me, he can't get near me. According to the terms of our deal, no matter what, if I figure out who he is, he has to release his claim on my soul and on Victor, no matter what. We're not completely fucked yet. I still have time to get to that ledger. I can still beat him. In the meantime, I've discussed what happened with my coworkers. We all agreed that it was best for me not to be alone, so I'll be staying with Victor for a while. Even with his tie to the hunt, he was more experienced when it came to things like this than Maina was. The full moon is coming. I swear, even if it's the last thing I do, I will learn that bastard's mane.
I ask you, share my voice with others. Let them know that there is warmth in the cold, light in the darkness. My friends, lovers,